Welcome. In some denominations, you'd make a trip to the pastor's study for answers to the really tough questions. Well, let's see what we can do here. Marry me. Blessed be. I'm Aidan Odinson, or Bishop Cal Lippitt, depending on how you know me. And welcome to another session in a very different pastor study. One of the things that you find in a study of the history of religion is conflicts. Not only between various religious groups, especially when they meet each other as strangers. After all, everybody's religion at one time was, to that individual, just the way they always did it. And then they discovered there were other people who had other ways. But then within a particular body, there would be those people who would have other ideas and want to do something a different way. And so, the history of religion has included a history of conflict. And sad to say, in this modern age, it's going on even now. Now, we may not necessarily have the Inquisition, although there is something pretty well equivalent of that in certain countries. And I'll have to say there are some folks in the United States who would love to have something like that. No. But there are various religious groups that have a tendency to fight dirty with each other and even go contrary to their own revered writings as to how they deal with their conflict. What do you do? Well, 4 words. Set a better example. Because they do it that way doesn't mean that I have to do it that way. Because they do it that way doesn't mean you and I have to do it that way. And there are several avenues. One of which is, if you really want diversity, if you really want inclusiveness, please mean it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the situation that crops up so often when suddenly something that was at one time unacceptable becomes acceptable, and then it goes from being acceptable to being the next best thing to a qualification. I'm not going to say what I feel about gay or lesbian clergy. I am going to say that in a church where it was once a bar, and then suddenly people treat it as if it were the next best thing to a qualification, then you're missing something. There have been a few situations in a couple of churches that I've been watching that tell me that. It's almost like, well, when you make it a qualification, when you make it a consideration, what other factors are you laying aside for the fact of you want to have this? I remember one time a young man, when a Native American bishop was retiring. He was a bishop. He was a bishop. And let me say it again. This gentleman was a real bishop. But this young man talking about how they needed a Native American bishop, I don't think he liked my question that I asked him later. Do you want a Native American bishop, or do you want a bishop who's a Native American? You get my drift? Now, inclusiveness and diversity, if you want to do that, make some provision for the traditional people. I am where I am because one particular church basically refused to, and as a matter of fact, tended to make the more traditional people a subject of ridicule. So yeah, respecting others and respecting boundaries. We do it this way, they do it that way. If you want to be here, here's how we do it. If you want to do that, you're welcome to be among them. Go there with my blessing. But here's what we do here. It's what makes the Temple of Gaia so nice, because we don't train you to our path. We help you seek and find your own path. In the Universal Episcopal Church, there's two provinces. St. Peter, for the ones that want the tradition, and St. Joseph of Arimathea for those who want to explore. Respecting each other and boundaries. And especially no hijacking. No, you don't come into a group and take it off into some other direction and leave some people behind wondering, what happened? Where did it go? There are a lot of people who take comfort in tradition, you know. And they want to know that what they believed as a child is still not wrong. And finally, hiving off. Now that's something that Wiccans do, and pagans, some of them. And I would like to suggest it for others. Now, the stories I've read and some of the revered writings I've read from the Buddhists tell me that there's a tradition like that there. At any rate, when the Hinayana and the Mahayana decided that they needed to be separate, they went each other their ways and were very happy and respectful of each other. Hiving off lets a group that wants to go a different way go that different way, with the blessings and respect of the people that they used to be part of. And isn't that wonderful? And I can see some bitterness in certain groups who didn't get to do that. I can think of churches that, and other groups that split off, and a couple of centuries later they're still not getting along with each other. And so I wanted to take this time to talk about conflict and talk about ways of avoiding it. Why? Because we've got a lot to do. And we don't need to waste our time. We don't need to spin our wheels. We need to take the energy and the time that we have and use it for what we're supposed to use it for. It's that simple. Efficiency. Efficient use of our resources. And besides that, we might discover that we're better friends than we thought. Blessed be. This has been a presentation of the Wise Ones Net. Merry part and blessed be.